Good morning, Allison. How are you?
Good morning, Susan. I am good. How are you?
Good. The weather's getting a little cooler, settling in here to fall, even though we've had outrageous heat we're breaking records over here. And, when I say outrageous, it should be in the 70s now, and we're like at 85 or 90. So um,
Yeah, we're the
that's,
same, but it's finally feeling cooler, cool enough that I got up early and got chicken soup going as a nice fall food.
oh, that sounds
Because
yummy.
I am pretending that it is cooler. It was actually like 80 yesterday, but today it's much colder. And you'll notice I changed my Zoom background
I
for,
did.
I'm moving on. People who watch and pay attention, I do tend to change it based on my mood. But this is from a recent vacation, so I always have to go there and pretend that I'm still on vacation, even though I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
know. What can we do?
yeah.
What can we
It's a
do?
very, very nice view. And for our listening audience, if you've been downloading and listening to our podcast. We appreciate it. We've also launched recently our YouTube channel. So if you want to get a back end view of how we do this and actually see us, hop out to YouTube and you can see our video.
In all our
Uh,
glory, wet
yeah.
hair and all.
Well, it's because I did not get up at 5 in the morning. I got up probably around 8 my time here. So yeah, my hair is still wet. That's all right.
That's respectable. It's all good. But it is fall now, and I'm going to pretend this is an amazing segue into a nice fall topic, which is getting your documents and things in order. So one of the things that Susan and I see all the time in clients' collections, and probably have some of them in our own as well, are pictures of a driver's license or a passport or the form you have to fill out every fall so that your kid can play soccer. Health insurance cards. We see all that all the time in photos. And we have a few different ways that we tend to deal with those within the photo collection. And I think Susan and I will probably talk about that at the end. We'll come back to that at the end. But we also wanted to invite Nat Robinson back on. He is the founder of Trustworthy. We had interviewed him initially at our Roots Tech episode, which was, I think it aired
I
in
think
March
April,
1,
yeah, March or
or
April.
maybe April 1st. I don't remember, but it's called something like Allison and Susan at Roots Tech. So I think of getting documents in order for whatever reason. I think of it as a fall activity. It's getting colder. You're inside, you're going through stuff,
You're
cleaning
doing
out,
office, yeah, office work.
doing office work. And I think this is also really timely given all of the hurricanes in the South. Do you know where your documents are? And even if you know where they are and you're keeping them in your safe or something, is that really what you're going to grab on the way out of the house? So,
Right.
yeah, so we're going to get into that today and give you another option for your documents and things. And also to just remind you that we only bring guests on and companies on that Susan and I actually like and tend to use. So just to get that out there.
Yep. So we both have embraced this product, this software, and I logged in and I got a congratulations. You now have 350 items. It sort of rewards you for backing up more things. So
And how many of them are for your pets? No, sorry. You don't have to answer that.
not very many. I just have their pictures and their birth dates and information like that. Their
Okay.
what do you call it? Those when they get tagged.
Oh, the chips.
The chips, yeah.
The chips,
So,
yeah.
gotta put that information in. So, yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. All right. So let's bring on our guest, Nat Robinson from Trustworthy. Come on in and welcome. Good morning.
Welcome.
It's nice to see you.
Hi, good morning, Susan Ellison. Great to be here. I'm here for the full digital decluttering that we have
There
to
you
make that a
go.
month or something, or maybe a whole quarter.
It should
Yeah.
be. Actually,
Yeah.
full digital decluttering should be all year round, but we seem to, as a society, like a month of something, you know.
Well, it's
November is
kind
the
of like
month to
spring.
declutter your documents.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we should make it a thing.
Well, it's like
Well,
Maybe,
we have spring cleaning, right? So
yeah,
that's the
that's what I was going to say.
season,
We have
right?
spring
Yeah.
cleaning. That's the time you open up the garage door and, sweep out the garage. So the fall cleaning is sweeping out your office.
yeah.
There you go.
I
I
think
like
it's
it.
something you should embrace now. Make it a thing.
Make it
We
a
So
will.
can
thing.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, where you're coming to us from today, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, Nat Robinson, founder and CEO of Trustworthy, the family operating system. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, for about the last 12 months. I was in California before that. And yeah, we're a distributed team. We have folks all around the country, in Canada, around the world. So we have really good cultural diversity just by the nature of where people live and where they're from. It's a really awesome company to be part of.
Great. And tell us a little bit about what you're trying to solve. When you created this business, what, uh, how did it pop into your head that this was something that you needed to develop?
Yeah. Well, let's see. It was probably back in 2019. My co-founder and I had young families, young kids, and so we were our dad brains were fully engaged, and we were thinking about this sort of what happens if something happens to me kind of problem. And it's now beyond me and my partner, my wife, uh, and how would we create a system where other people, where either my spouse or other people would know where to go to find everything. And we tried doing that in sort of the tools at hand, all the things that people might typically use. And we found that like it was really hard actually to create that system from scratch, to sort of what we call now DIYing it. And we ended up talking to other, sort of peers and families, and they were doing something similar. They were all DIYing it, creating their own systems from scratch and to varying degrees of success, and using all kinds of systems, right? So, and paper-based systems, and all pretty much every single digital tool you could imagine. From I have it on my iPhone in the Notes app, or I put things in photos and I have a folder for photos of documents, to productivity tools and all the usual ones you'd expect. And we looked at that. We tried doing that ourselves, and we just said, look, these really are not purpose built. They all came up short. Um, and in people trying to solve this problem of really information overload, um, right? I now have so much information in my life. We've been in the information age for 60 something years now. I now have so much information that I'm trying to deal with across my household. It's usually in two parts, meaning I manage one set of things and my partner manages another set of things. And those are kind of black boxes. I don't really know what's going on that side of the house. But in general, I'm worried that I'm going to lose track of something, and that if something happens to me, my family won't know how to deal with it or where to find it. That's really the problem. And people had tried to build systems for themselves. And we said, look, this is crazy. Why isn't there a system for families? Certainly, we could help people get further faster with a system of record that they could snap to. And that's really what we built in the family operating system. And you get a sense of what it is just from the name. But really, it's the ability to keep track of all your important information across the household, so that you have access to it whenever you need it, so that your loved ones can go find that treasure map if something were to happen, and just understand it. There's another aspect to that, which we call household equity, which is, making sure that the right people have the right information at the right time, and that across your house is no sort of black boxes, really.
That's really
Um,
important. Yeah,
yeah,
because you
those are the
could
big use
store it
cases.
somewhere, but then upon your passing, if you have not informed your loved ones how to find where you've put that, it could be locked in a program that they don't have a password to, or access,
or a device. Yeah.
and or a
Yeah.
device. So if you're putting everything on your phone, and your phone during the situation that you lose your life maybe is gone as well. Yeah, for me, I've been in IT for a long time, and I've tried a lot of different apps, and sometimes just, some of the note taking you mentioned apps were, often easiest to, throw a note up there or take a picture and add it. I've done it in password managers as well. So what makes it different than, storing your software? How does it make it different than me just putting it up, say, on Dropbox or something?
Yeah. Well, it's purpose built obviously for families and for this particular situation of, keeping it secure, letting you have access to it when you need it. What we found in looking at all the other tools that people had tried to use was they all started with a blank page, right? And
Mhm.
that can be really debilitating for many, many people. Like, I don't know where to start. So the very first thing you get into in Trustworthy is we create a custom set of recommendations for your family. These are sort of represented as tiles within the application, just from answering a couple of quick questions about sort of your family size and ages, and we make some assumptions. And that's way better than starting with a blank page. So that gives you things to respond to and say, oh, I have one of those. Yep, great, I'll fill that in. Or actually, I don't have one of those. I'm just going to cancel that and remove that. So that sort of initial part of the system, we call it the recommendation engine, but just gives you some guidance in getting this set up across all the categories that we support today, as sort of that initial why it's different. But some other big elements are the ability to, share things very easily, but in a temporal way, meaning I might not want to share all the information today. I want you to know where to go to find it. But I don't necessarily need you or want you to look at everything. I don't want to create conflicts in my family. I don't want to have arguments about who's getting what, those kinds of things. Sort of the issue that comes up in estate management, right? The other big ones are, most of the sort of documents you might use today, like Dropbox or Google, they're sort of what we call dumb containers, meaning you put information in there and you store it. And it doesn't really know, or it's not giving you feedback or a return on your information, is what we like to say. Sure, it'll hold it there. It'll probably keep it secure, although there's a question mark around free tools. Is it really secure? What are they doing with your information?
Exactly.
Which is sort of another big element to Trustworthy. But we aspire to give you a big return on that information. We do that today with reminders, right? When we import information, we extract important dates or expiration dates, and we give you alerts about those dates as things come up. So an example might be, hey, your passport is going to expire, 90, 60, 30 days ahead of that. We'll give you alerts and make sure that you're on it, and across the system. So that's one big element, is this idea of optimizing your system over time. We started with reminders, but there's lots more we aspire to do as we go on.
Yeah.
One thing you said earlier, which is related to this, was something about not only is the information in there, but the ability to understand it. So one of the things that I find difficult in other systems before is if you are outlining, all the things that happen with a house, for example, you're going to have maybe a photo of the various documents that go with the house. You might have a note that says, call Joe for, fixing the deck or something like that. But what I find hard is that if I just had to take over a house for somebody, I wouldn't really know where to start. I look in that folder, but I'd be floundering, and I'd be, okay, who's the electric company? Who's the phone company? Where is this or where is that? And so this way it's kind of laid out. So you see the house, you see, okay, there's the mortgage, there's the bank, there's the snow removal, there's the electric. And I find that as valuable as just having the documents themselves. It's a roadmap.
Yeah, so this is another thing that Trustworthy does is sort of maps those connections across your system to say, oh, this is an insurance policy, but it relates to this house or it relates to this piece of property, car maybe, and or this is an estate plan that relates to these people, and maybe there's a business or an LLC or something connected to the estate. So we map those connections across the system so you can sort of see that connective tissue and how things interrelate. And then, of course, we have these free-form notes for every entity you might put in there. You can say, hey, here's some instructions about this things, or here's some things you might need to know. And then, Allison, you mentioned contacts. We can add context for every entity as well. Hey, this is the realtor that we used, or this is the electrician. All the people that you might need to know about as part of the system.
And what
Yeah.
I like too is you can come at it from different ways, different navigational menus. So everybody thinks differently. And when you said, if you were to put it out on Dropbox, or you were to put it out in Google or Notes or any of those note-taking programs, you're starting with a blank sheet, and it requires you to figure out the organizational structure. So, everybody, if they're not given a structure to put it in, then the way I approach or file my digital documents might be completely different than Allison. And so, if she were to even go to my, 2-drawer file cabinet here, it may not make sense to her initially. She'd have to go through, the 2 drawers to figure out where I keep my insurance paperwork, if that were the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I do think people listening might be thinking, well, hold on, I am very organized. And I personally am a very organized person, right? I can just create a folder either physically or in Dropbox or on my computer or wherever. I can label all of the things. I can put in all the instructions. What do you say to those people? First of all, I'm going to
Yeah,
say that nobody is really as organized as they think they are. I think that percentage of people who could really do that, myself included, is pretty slim, but it could happen.
yeah. We call them the one percenters, meaning, from what we've seen, and we've seen now hundreds or thousands of people's systems before they adopted Trustworthy, there's a very small percentage of folks who have built beautifully elaborate systems and maintain them. I think that's
Maintain
really the
them. Yeah.
key is great. I was able to build it. I spent a weekend doing it, whatever. But now I've got to keep it up to date over time. And that's a really critical factor with Trustworthy is we help you keep things up to date. And in doing so, we help you avoid the costs, right, of not being up to date or not doing things on time. The average American family is paying this crazy number now, $1,268 per year in late fees and penalties and overages and cost to their credit. It's a number that's gone up. Obviously, as inflation's gone up, things got more expensive, but it's a big number, and it's insidious, right? It's all these little fees and things that you don't really notice, but it's real. For me, I personally just got charged a late fee for a credit card I don't use very often. It was $40, and they'd also charged me $18.02 in interest on top of
Yeah.
that. And I was like, okay, well, I see how you're getting to $1,268. You have a couple more of those, combined fees. Obviously, I was able to call them and, ask them to forgive me, and they did. But if you multiply that by the number of credit cards or accounts or other systems that people have, it adds up very, very quickly.
So it provides an unbelievable amount of peace and serenity in your life, because for me, I've forgotten to renew my driver's license. I've had clerks, as I hand it to them, say, your license is going to expire in 5 days. And I'm like, really? I never look at it. So same thing with passports. The only time I think about them is before a trip, and hopefully it's a year before I need to leave because of the amount of time it takes to renew it. So, so with that being said, I'm putting a lot of my information into this program. How are you going to keep me and my information safe?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think coming back to one of those things that differentiates us from other tools is our business model is essentially keeping your information safe and private, right? That we're not a free tool. We're not ever going to sell your information, or your information isn't the product. So it's a big underpinning of just that our business model is aligned with keeping your information safe and secure. But other than that, we've made a massive investment in security. We don't really talk about it enough. We don't really talk about security at all because we're worried, right, that people will be able to, if they understand what we're doing to keep your information secure, that they'll be able to, somehow work around it. But if you go to our site, we're very transparent about what we do. There's a big thing that says security right at the top. And as much as we can share, we share in terms of our practices, our compliances, our culture, really all the elements that we've built around into the platform to keep information private and secure. I mean, I think one of the things that we do that no one else does because it's very expensive is called tokenization. This is an element where sometimes called aliasing, but we essentially take all the very secure information, say an example might be your social security number, and we take it out of your account. We're going to replace it with a hashed key. You're the only one that holds that key, and it happens across all your information, and that information is then extracted to a different server. So even if we were breached, all they would retrieve is that hash key, and they couldn't make any sense of it. The
Right,
best
because they
analogy
don't
for
have the
this,
other key.
that's
So,
right.
so there's a public key for folks and there's a private key so that our listening audience can understand. And when you talk about, security tokenization or hash, you have to have both of those keys in order to unlock the data. So if it's being stored on your servers, that's fine because they're not going to have your local login information or that other key that goes along with unlocking that data.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
to be absolutely clear, because you had said a few minutes ago that you saw a lot of sort of before and afters. You didn't phrase it quite that way, but a lot of examples of what people did before versus what they can do now with Trustworthy. Everything's on your servers, but does anybody in your company actually see any of it? Just another way of getting to the same question we just asked you, but just to be 100% clear. Like, can you go and look up my records as a member of
No,
Trustworthy?
I cannot. That's sort of one of the cultural practices of Trustworthy is, building security into every decision we make. And of course, that was an easy one to make. We don't want to have the liability of employees having access to any information. So beyond that, we do regular training around security. We make sure that no one in our company is a liability. And we do our best to protect member information by, you have to have a robust password. You have to have two-factor authentication turned on. It's not optional, right? So that's really key. That's a huge step up in most families' security. What we find is that most families are doing very insecure things. And just by adopting Trustworthy puts them in this much, much better posture around their information, while
I can
giving
see
them
that.
more access and utility from their information as well.
Okay, here's one more question on that. There was an article recently, very recently, that 23andMe may go into bankruptcy and be sold. And along
Mm.
with that, 23andMe, if you haven't heard of it, you can send your DNA and you can do a sample. They'll give you they'll look at your DNA, they'll give you a report back. I don't use it, so I'm kind of guessing, but they give you a report back essentially saying, these are people you're related to, these are some health conditions you might have, all that kind of private information that is out there. And now they are either going into bankruptcy or looking at being sold. I'd have to look back. I wasn't planning to bring this up, but something you said reminded me of it. And one
Yeah,
of the concerns is that data may no longer be protected. So what happens if Trustworthy goes under, Trustworthy is sold, that type of thing? What safeguards are there?
yeah. So with the same very similar approach to Ancestry in terms of you can download your information. So I'm a 23andMe customer. I wonder if they might sell to Ancestry because they have a similar service around DNA, right? Um, but I've downloaded my information really for other reasons than them going out of business. I had wanted to do that a while back, and that's you just go into your account and download it. And so with Trustworthy, you can do exactly the same thing. We have a download option that gives you the files and a zip file and the information in a spreadsheet. So we never are in this situation of holding your information hostage. That's not what we're about. We really want to give you a facility around your information. It's kind of our North Star, is helping families get more out of their information, to the point even where they could potentially monetize it, right? That they're benefiting from financially from sharing their information, rather than say Google or some other company like Facebook that's clearly in the business of selling your information or using it.
Well, the difference between Trustworthy's, data and 23andMe, we have no idea what the security policies are with 23andMe and whether or not the general employees have access to our data. So that, that's all behind a curtain that we're, and I also am a 23andMe customer. And I have downloaded my data, but I haven't deleted my account because
and I didn't want to take us on a segue into a long discussion
No,
about 23,
it's
but it
an
brought up
important
that
discussion.
question.
It's relevant because
Yeah.
again, you're giving information you can't get back. It's like there's a lot of question about scanning your eye or your fingerprint or your face as personal identification, because you're not likely going to change that anytime soon, right? And so who are you going to allow to scan and import and manage that personal bio data about yourself?
Well, and who really owns it, I think, is a big question, right?
Right.
Okay, you might have signed terms of service or something with 23andMe, and in the fine print, you may not have realized that oh, now we own your biomarkers, right? We now own your DNA, and you're like, well, that's not really what I want, right? I don't want you monetizing my DNA and selling it to medical companies, right? And they survey you through email. And Susan, you probably get these emails from 23andMe, like they're trying to get more and more information from you constantly.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
really
Did you
the
take this test? Did you take that test?
You're right.
Yeah.
Do can you roll your tongue? When you look at the sun, do you sneeze? Those kinds of things, right?
Seriously, when you look at the sun,
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
sneeze?
No, there's a I guess
Well,
there's a DNA.
there's a
there's DNA for that.
questionnaire and you answer the questions and it helps them understand people with your set of chromosomes have
Right.
these types of reactions, and that's how they tell you what your personality traits are and all kinds of health traits.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's just funny. That's just funny. I'm sorry.
No,
It's just
it's
funny. Yeah.
it's fascinating and scary all at the same time. And I'm not sure I would be so concerned if, who they sold their company to, except, there's that conversation about insurance, but, that's a whole nother podcast. So
My point for raising that was just more protections that are in place should something happen to Trustworthy. You've talked about the protections of all of our data right now, but if something were to happen to Trustworthy, is that all still protected? Is that built in? That was really the basis of that question.
Well, here's a different perspective. We have customers in Canada who ask us, where is my information kept? What servers and where are the servers located? Because I don't want potentially the US government getting access to my information. Can you guarantee that the servers are in Canada for my information? Very similar for customers in Europe, right?
Europe,
Same deal. So there is a big sort of growing question about who owns my information, who benefits from my information, and who's monetizing my information, and why am I not getting paid for that as part of the equation, right? I get free tools, sure, okay, that's good. Facebook, I get to chat with my friends and see photos, but is it really worth the cost of them monetizing my information? And clearly they're doing a great job of that, right?
They are.
Zuckerberg's now the second most wealthy person in the world, right? Based on what they've done with our information.
Yeah,
So,
Susan and I have talked about this before in other contexts, but I'm a big believer that anything important you need to pay for. Don't use a free service for anything important because there's no safeguards for you. They don't care. It's
Right.
free. Why would they ever care about what you want and your data? And, I'm not going to name
And
names, but
protecting
there's
you in
lots of
any way.
companies out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not their impetus. They can do whatever they want with your stuff at any time. So I am a big believer in if there's a service that you want that's important to you and it has anything to do with personal data, you absolutely need to pay for it. So
Right.
So yeah, so
yeah,
then our philosophies are aligned because at Trustworthy we wholeheartedly believe and support that you own your information, and you
yeah.
should benefit. You should be the only ones that benefit from that.
So let's
Right.
move on to well, let's talk about some use cases. So right now, there are hurricanes. I'm sure there's going to be more, and mass devastation like everywhere in the South. And, I'm thinking about these people whose houses were flooded out, completely destroyed. And I was thinking to myself, if that were me, there's always the question of what do you grab first? If you've got 15 minutes, what do you take from your house? And most people don't say, my mortgage papers or the deed, although hopefully you're not keeping your deed to your house in your, in your closet. I don't know, maybe you are. And that's where I think something like Trustworthy shines. I mean, we're talking, yes, it's helpful for every day also, but if there's a mass catastrophe, I don't want to have to worry about those documents. I want to worry about my pets. I want to worry about grabbing the drive with all my photos on it also. But that type of thing, you don't want to have to worry about the papers and such. And I think that is where having something like this in place can be really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting backdrops to what we're building in society right now. One is digital transformation, right? This notion that everything is becoming digitized or digital first or digital only. So, increasingly things will arrive in your email inbox, not your mailbox, right? And if that's the case, your filing cabinet's really ineffective, right? There's nothing to put, right? So where are you keeping all those important documents and information if that's true, right? And we see that trend. It sort of accelerated through the pandemic, where we were forced to have to do more like this meeting. We had to do everything digitally, right? And many companies are seeing the benefits, the financial benefits of doing digital first. And sometimes power companies, for example, will incentivize you to get a digital copy of your power bill. So that's a
And you can
trend.
still, yeah, and you can find that. I mean, if your house is destroyed, you still have your email somewhere. But the difference is that, and I have to do this on a frequent basis for other things, no longer for important documents, but search my email for where is I know I received. And then you
Yeah.
have to remember, okay, who is it from, or when did you receive it? Or it's the same, because this is a photo show. It's not that different from how we help people and talk about all the time. How do you find those photos that you want? And it's the same
Yeah.
thing. You have to search through everything, which is one reason why we decided to do this episode. Like I said, we said at the beginning, is we see licenses and passports and health cards and multiple copies of all of them, people's photographs, and you have to go through and search. And it would be nice to know,
Yeah.
if everything is just falling all around you, that you can leave. And then when you get internet, again, if you've lost it, is you can just open up your phone, open up an app and say, okay, my passport was
Yeah.
destroyed because I forgot to grab it. But at least I have the numbers, which will make things a lot easier if I have to go get a new one. That kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how do you get prepared? The other backdrop of, let's call it climate change, this increasing number of wildfires and we're in hurricane season. So it makes sense. I hear there's another one coming. Is it Frank? Is
I don't know. I
is
haven't
heading
heard.
towards Florida? Yeah. I just saw it
Oh,
this morning.
Milton.
It's Milton.
Um,
So just for our
um,
listening audience, we're taping this earlier in October here, but
Yeah. There'll
yeah.
probably be another one by then. Whatever
yes,
comes, the next name in the
exactly.
alphabet.
But for
Unfortunately.
me, when my parents aged and now they've passed, I'm the keeper of their birth certificates. I'm the keeper of their death certificates. If you are looking for information that they may have saved paperwork or letters or something that's important regarding their, like my dad's military records and things like that. That's all been scanned and put into Trustworthy. So,
Great.
I've got copies of that backed up. So if my brother wants a copy moving forward, or for whatever reason we need to prove that they're dead, I don't have to necessarily go out and get another paper copy of a document to show them. So
Yeah, getting prepared before that eventuality is top of mind for our members as well. They're thinking about their own household. They're also thinking about their parents. And sometimes they adopt Trustworthy for their parents before the estate transition. Sometimes they'll do it after to collect all the information and share it with siblings and other
Mhm.
stakeholders. So it's great in that respect. And this is so we talked about digital transformation, we talked about climate change. This is the third big societal thing that's happening, is this great wealth transfer. The baby boomer generation retiring and enjoying their golden years and thinking about that sort of inevitable transition. So those are big shifts in society. I guess you could include global unrest, but people just thinking about, okay, am I organized? Am I prepared? I talked to one family a couple of weeks ago. She's like, we have evacuated 8 times because of wildfires. Our kids have their bag by their bedroom door. They know exactly what goes in there. If it's not in there, they're ready. And that's why we're adopting Trustworthy, because I just don't want to have to think about the house and the documents anymore.
Right. Yeah, there's just so much to think about in emergency planning. So how does somebody, get started with your program? Is it I like the onboarding questions that you said, but tell us a little bit about what you offer your clients here.
Yeah, sure. The easiest way to get started is go to trustworthy.com and sign up for a 14-day free trial. We don't ask for a credit card or any payment information. You can just try it for yourself, see if it's a good fit your family. Let us know if you have any questions, and if you need longer, just contact support. We'll give you longer to try it out. There's really no risk, and if you decide it's not for you, you just let us know. We'll delete your account. We'll delete all your information.
Yeah, when I looked at it initially, probably, I don't know, not quite a year ago, I think, I want to say. I remember looking at it, and when I first went in there, I literally just tried to click on all the things. And you can get a decent sense of what it is without doing the free trial. You can see a lot on the website, but it wasn't until I did the free trial where I could click on literally all the buttons. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, wait, I don't have one of those documents. We should probably have that. That's the other thing that's super helpful. But I actually want to go back. I think getting started is actually pretty easy. Like you said, you go to the website, and we'll put the links in our show notes also. And it's relatively straightforward to get things uploaded and in there and categorized. One of the nice things that I liked, and going back to something you said a little bit earlier about emergency planning, is you can add addition. So there's some set categories, doctors, and now I don't even remember what they are, your mortgage or your banks or license and passport, that kind of thing. But you can actually also add. So thinking about emergency planning, my son just moved to Washington, state of Washington. I'm in Chicago, so he's not close. When he started at school, they gave him his emergency earthquake backpack, which I will say freaked me out just a little bit. It's a big, not huge, but a red backpack with all the things in it that you need should the big one come and, destroy Seattle on the West Coast. But I was also thinking what we did for him is we actually gave him you call them tiles or family IDs in Trustworthy, I think. And I gave him access to his family ID, which is his driver's license, his passport, some other important documents. But I also put in there some additional categories for him, some medical things. I also actually, for both my kids, put their high school diplomas and their transcripts so they'd stop asking me if they ever need that stuff. But For him, he's broken a lot of bones. So I put a document in there that has literally the history of which bone was broken that when, so that when he goes to the doctor for the next one and they ask, he can just pull that up. But the other thing I did was my brother lives in Washington State. So I gave my brother access because he may be more likely to handle an emergency. Now with cell phones, I'd probably still get the call first, but this way my brother has the information for my son as well. So I'd actually like to talk more about the sharing aspect because to me that is priceless. He has it and he looked at it and I think it took him 2 minutes. First he said, wait a minute, what is this link you're sending me? I was like, just open it up, accept whatever the mechanism was. And he's like, oh, okay, I get it. And everything was clear as day, what it was, why it was there. So it wasn't just me sending an email with a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, here's an email with some of the medical stuff. Oh, I forgot to send this other thing. So here's a second email with another piece of it. And here's a revised document because I missed something the first time.
Mhm.
And I get these things. My parents, I think, listen to this podcast, but I get these things from my parents a lot. And I was like, I got it. I got it. We're
Yeah,
good. We're good.
this
But talk about the
this is perfect.
sharing of it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of this funny Instagram post where this 30-something is on the phone at the doctor's office and she's calling her mom as she's filling out the form. Mom, have I ever had a concussion kind of thing. So this
Yep.
adulting journey is really interesting. It's one we hear about in the fall, every year. Oh, kids are going off to college. I'm sort of handing them the things, the birth certificate, the social security card, whatever it is.
Power of
But
health
yeah,
documents. Once they turn
right,
18, we get no access anymore. So my kids
right.
both signed those. Those are in there. Yeah.
This really adulting journey begins. And that's great. I mean, Allison, you're kind of a super user, trustworthy. You're
Not yet.
making me pretty excited here. You absolutely get what we intended in terms of being able to utilize your information and share it with the folks who need it, and give them the sort of right amount of access at the right time. So the fact that your son can now access this, hopefully he has the mobile app, the app on his mobile device.
He'll still
And
probably call me and I'll say it's untrustworthy. Go get it yourself. But
yeah, yeah, this phrase "it's untrustworthy" is becoming more and more common. We love to hear that, because it means you've done the work, you've done the planning, and now it's available to use wherever you need to use it. That your brother has it. Um,
and
uh,
my brother only has that actually.
yeah,
He doesn't have
exactly.
access to anything else. I've got a bunch of my parents' stuff in there, which I should probably give him access to too, but it's
Yeah,
segmented. But how is that protected? So my account, obviously two-factor authentication, this and that. But when I share it, what are the protections in place for the people that I'm sharing it with?
yeah.
Like, what if somebody
So
just gets his phone or whatever?
yeah, the same security for everyone that they've had to become a collaborator on your account. They've had to go through the same account creation process, same two-factor authentication setup, as a collaborator. And there's really different kinds of collaborators in the system. One is, think of it as like full access. It's probably your partner or spouse, that can see everything that you've uploaded, and that you can see everything that they've uploaded as well. And so you're collaborating in that respect and bringing those two sides of the house together. Then we have limited access collaborators, like sounds like your brother. You've just given him access to this one tile about your son. For me, it's my accountant who just has access to the taxes category all year long. I'm collecting all the bits of paper that I need him to know about. And then at the end of the tax year, I say, okay, it's all ready to go. He can download those files, file my tax returns, and when he gets the completed tax returns, he can upload them into Trustworthy for me. So think about all the use cases where that might be true across your family, like an accountant or a wealth advisor, or an estate planning attorney, maybe a realtor or a title company, across different moments and different kinds of transactions. You might you generally add collaborators to have ongoing access, some kind of ongoing access. And then we have this last category of legacy contacts where, hey,
That was going to be
I
my
can't
next question.
see
Yeah.
anything today. I know it exists. I know where to go to find things. I know what the unlock process is if something were to happen to Allison, but I can't see any information today. And so those are could be, you know, a brother or a sister or an adult child maybe, that you want to have. I don't really want you to see all the things today, but if something were to happen to me, you know where to go to get all the information and instructions.
Yeah, in my account, I have my brother in so that he's my executor and also emergency contact. But there's different levels in the system. So you said there's the owner, all access collaborators, and then limited access collaborators, and then the emergency contact. So somebody who's your emergency contact could then also have access to your account for different, for example, the will or your business documents or whatever.
Yes. Yep. They can have access to really anything after the fact, after you've become incapacitated or deceased.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
we
you
tried
said you,
to,
I
yeah,
was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
you said you put all your tax documents in there, like all the receipts and things, which made me think, how much storage does each account come with? You know, this is not a
Unlimited.
photo
Yeah.
software, so we're not
Right.
talking
Right.
about people uploading like a terabyte worth of photos. That's not what this is for. But I was thinking the receipts and things, not that any one scan is very big, but is there a limit on what can be put in there in terms of storage for either
No, there's
images?
no,
And what about video? Like I've
we
got all
don't,
these videos of,
yeah.
certain things in the house. This is how this works, which I haven't
Yeah.
actually put up there yet.
You could
But
upload them. No one's really pushed the envelope on storage yet, so we don't limit it. We don't, like you said,
so
we
I
don't.
shouldn't have said, I shouldn't have brought it up, right? Don't do
No,
this.
it's completely fine. I mean, I don't think anyone's looking at trustworthy as like I want to keep files there, right?
Yeah.
It's more of a I need access and utility and you know, emergency access for my loved ones from this information. These are important documents.
Yeah,
Um,
I do love the legacy aspect too. We've had, deaths in our immediate family, and having to untangle that is a nightmare, and both emotionally and just logistically. And so there have definitely been times where I'd wish that this existed then, or that we knew about it then. It would have made things a lot easier on the
Well, it's a
yes,
person
and
that's
one-stop.
left behind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a one-stop shop for, all everything. Like you said, you called it your family. What did Nat? What did you say?
we call it the family operating system.
The family operating. I just love that because, you know, uh, I've got miscellaneous accounts and whatnot. Should I pass? My brother's not necessarily going to know what all those accounts are. And until he can figure out how to get into my computer or my phone or look at my filing system, is he going to find, statements for certain accounts that I don't carry the cards in my wallet? Or, it's like, how does somebody unravel that information? And this is like the yellow brick road. I mean, you just open up the door and you've got, everything that you need to settle an estate. You could set it up that way.
Yeah, I mean, we really intend for it to be useful today and across generations, right? We think of it as a multi-generational system that your heirs will inherit your trustworthy account as part of the estate. They'll know how to transact everything, and they'll then incorporate that, like in the same way that you've done with your dad's information. I did the same thing last year. My dad passed away last year. I have a tile for all his stuff where we've collected it, and so in theory, that gets passed on to the next generation.
And so speaking of that, I pay an annual subscription. So what happens upon my death then?
Mm.
Yeah, so you're obviously there's unless you die the day before your end of your subscription period, there would be months for the family to access the account and decide if they want to continue the subscription or incorporate your information into their subscription.
Or
Okay,
they
so
could
that
just download
handoff.
it all. Can they download it all if they wanted?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
and
you've
then the
given them
hand.
permission, just to be clear, you've given them permission as a legacy person, so they would have that ability.
Yeah, if there were no
Yeah.
more full access collaborators or limited, that emergency contact would be able to unlock everything and download it, take it with them. Yeah.
And you mentioned this handoff that intrigues me. So if my brother has a trustworthy account, you said there's an easy handoff that he could incorporate my account information that he wanted to keep into his.
Yeah, there's a sort of incorporation process. If you want to merge accounts, we can help do that. It's not something that's available on the front end today, but we can do it on the back end.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's good to know. What else don't we know? What can you share with us about what might be? And I did not give you this question. We give some questions in advance, not this one, but what is like, can you tell us anything about what's coming down the pipe? What things that
Sure.
you're working on that you're looking at adding?
Yeah. Well, I think you know that we released some AI functionality into the tool in the last few months, really in the interest of automating the curation of your system, of building your system. So the AI will look at documents that you import and figure out what to do with them. It'll give you a summary, it'll give you metadata that it pulls out of there that it can inject into Trustworthy. So it really is a facility to sort of speed up the way that you get organized, the pace at which you get organized. And It's sort of the first step on the road to completely automating your system, meaning pretty soon you'll be able to point Trustworthy at an email account or a folder or something, a feed of information, and Autopilot will just start ingesting all that information and automatically organizing it for you. So we have the first part of that today. It's obviously progressing as we build out the engine that understands household documents. But essentially every week that gets better. And then the next couple of things that are coming, search is going to be coming very soon, meaning I can quickly search across, my hundreds of documents that you now have, or maybe thousands in some of our users, and find the thing that I'm looking for and get that where it needs to go quickly. And then probably next year, the ability to ask Trustworthy about your system and essentially make a query like, hey, Trustworthy, how much did I spend on car insurance last year?
Yeah.
Or some other, sort of aggregate. Hey, Trustworthy, create a report of when all my car registrations are due, or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we're excited for that future,
Yeah.
enabled by sort of AI capabilities, making your life both more easy in terms of curation and more useful in terms of optimizing your system and getting more out of it.
I like it.
Well,
There's a lot
I'm
of
impressed with it.
possibilities
I just find that the guided onboarding was immensely helpful because it has so many different components to it, different areas where you can store things, and then how it helps you then tie this person with this doc, or I've got a business and now I have business insurance versus my homeowner's insurance or my car insurance, but it just ties it all together in a nice package for you. And I'm sitting here thinking, I probably should go back in here. It's got 65 recommended
there.
items I need to address.
Get
So,
on it, Susan.
right.
I probably
There's
have more
always,
than that.
there's always something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
it
think there's
really
Always more to do.
a
helped.
peace of mind element there
Yeah, that's what I
too.
was going to say.
Yeah.
It really helped me just reduce some angst about how am I going to keep up with all my documents and know that they're stored outside of this house. And that was my goal. And you solved that in a secure way, because that's important.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for your business. I'm excited you're both customers and you're getting a lot out of it. That's
It
amazing.
sounds like an infomercial.
Yeah.
Well,
And
when
we
you have
are going to
happy
talk about,
clients, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it is a little bit of an infomercial because, like I said at the very beginning, we don't bring people on or companies that we don't use. So this is something that we both use, and it solves a problem that we see all the time in our businesses, which is what we started with, is that I think every single collection I have ever received from a client, every single one
yeah,
has something in there that should be, I won't say shouldn't be there, because there are ways to protect your key documents if they're in your photos. And Susan and I are going to talk about this when we're done with Nat. But they're there every single time, and multiple copies. So
yes.
passports and driver's licenses are the ones I see the most. And
Children's health records,
yeah, I
the
mean, they're all over.
cards. Yep.
all over there. And this solves a problem because they really shouldn't be there. And you really want to be seeing those in your photo, you know, memories from today. Oh, my driver's license. You know, that's not a memory that I want to see from today. Uh, and I just don't, you know, I don't want them there. I want my photos to be my photos. And then I want the other stuff, the other life stuff to be elsewhere. But there is, like I said, there's a peace of mind that comes from as you get your things organized and you know if something happens to you or a big event comes, we do get flooding in Chicago, not anything like what they're facing in the South, but just knowing that you don't have to worry about that stuff. Same with the photos. When clients bring me their stuff, the first thing they feel is relief because it's being taken care of. And this is just another aspect of that. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
fans, which is why we asked you to come back on.
Thank you
So
so much.
yeah, so to wrap up, of course, I always have to ask the question. Normally, the question is, what is the strangest photo in your collection? Today, I'm going to ask you, what is the most unusual document that you keep in your own trustworthy account? It can be a photo
Uh,
too, if that happens to be it, but doesn't have to be.
it's a sort of a combination of a photo and a memory. It's actually cricket balls, which is something. I'm from New Zealand originally, and I grew up playing cricket, and have this artifact from our partners at Artifacts about these two cricket balls that I have in sort of my memory box. You know, I don't know if you have a box of stuff from when you're a kid, but I do. And there's a couple of cricket balls in there because of all the great memories I have playing cricket with my family and my friends. And that's really the export of the artifacts that I have stored in Trustworthy, as sort of a way to document some of the emotional assets in my estate. So Trustworthy is really good at dealing with financial and sort of operational things. But we also want to try to, you know, integrate some of those partner solutions around the emotional assets as well.
Yes.
That
And
is
we've had Heather
really
and
interesting.
her company on as well with Artifacts.
Yeah.
So, you
That's
know,
really interesting. Hold on. So now I have to ask a follow-up question. Um, so Artifacts, we have had Heather Nickerson was on, I can't remember which episode that was, several months
oh,
ago. Maybe it was end
yeah.
of last year, I think. And you know, our company Artifacts is where you can things that are important to you, things, actual physical things, usually, not always, that are around your house. A piece of artwork, we'll use that as an example. You take a picture of it, you put it in their software, and you can put a whole information about it, a story behind it, but also succession notes or value or anything like that. Now, why are you bringing that information into Trustworthy? What's the,
Uh,
I'm not sure I see why you're cross. I don't know
there's
what the word
I don't
is.
know, there's a couple of reasons. Artifacts is a marketplace partner for us. And we're looking at ways to better integrate our partner solutions. So one of the promises of Trustworthy is, hey, look, I have all this information sitting here, and there are things I might want to do with it. So like getting a trust or will, for example, is one. How do I use my information to inform getting a trust and will, for example? So we're looking at building an API to let you negotiate that transfer of information. Meaning, yeah, I do want the thing that this partner is offering, like an artifact, for example. How do I transact my information in Trustworthy and give them access to some of my information for some period of time so that I get something back in return? In this case, I had a piece of property in Trustworthy, was these sort of memory items, these cricket balls, and I was able to sort of transact those to Artifact, create the story using their solution, and then pull that back into Trustworthy.
Oh,
So we're
Nice.
looking at
okay.
deeper integrations, but this is all sort of representation of I have information. Maybe I need to get a bank transaction done, or I need an approval for a car loan, or I need something else. I'm going to use the information in my Trustworthy account to get the things that I want more quickly and more efficiently.
That's interesting. And I just looked it up. The Artifacts episode with Heather Nickerson is season 1, episode 7, which was in January, so earlier this year. But that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, doing it that way.
Yeah. So something we want to build into your experience is again more optimization. If it looks like you have a gap in your system, how do we make recommendations for you to fill those gaps with things that you might need, like a trust or a will or a healthcare directive or a power of attorney or some emotional kind of asset, like you want to connect your photos, for example. How do we help you get those services and products that you might want to augment your system with?
Nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now my head is spinning a little bit with, other things that I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah, we'll save that for a future podcast when our
I'll say,
APIs
and
Live will
you'll
come
get one
back
of
and talk
those
about
those emails from me. Hey, Nat, I had an idea.
it.
Here it is.
Well,
Um,
you guys are customers. I would love your feedback. You guys are using the system. If you have ways to make it or suggestions to make it better, would love to hear that.
and for all our listeners too. So all of our listeners, if any of you sign up for Trustworthy, you can just email Nat and say, here are my ideas.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Very
All
good.
right.
Anything else you want to leave us with before we let you go?
No, this has been a fun experience. Thank you very much for having me on. And as I said, please let us know if you have any ideas for how to make Trustworthy better for everyone.
Great.
Well, Susan and I are full of ideas. So be careful what you ask for, what you wish for. We
Perfect.
might just come back to you.
All right. Sounds great.
But
Thank you both.
thank
All
you so
right.
much,
Thank
Nat.
you. Thank you so much for
Bye-bye.
joining us.
Okay. That
That was
was,
great.
yeah, I mean, I learned something again, and I've been using the software, like I said, probably about a year, I think. Not to its fullest capacity, like everybody else. I'm busy and it's not like I could sit down one day and get everything in there. But slowly, as for me, things go in. I put a bunch of stuff in at the beginning, and then other things go in sort of as I have a need. So my son going to college, who breaks all the bones, that was a need. So I made sure and added things there. My other son, who may be studying abroad in the spring, if he's overseas, I don't, if he can't reach me at 2 o'clock in the morning and he needs something, I want him to have it. But it
Right.
really is
Yeah,
a
no, it's a
great
great
solution.
tool.
Yeah.
And to that point, I'm just sitting here thinking, I was leasing a vehicle and then I just got an auto loan for it. So, I'm thinking, what other updates do I need to address? Because it's something that you do need to pay attention to, almost put a tickler
Yeah.
event in your calendar and say anything new to add to Trustworthy. Sometimes you let go of a credit card or you get a new card or
Mhm.
change your business information for whatever reason. So yeah, you have to care for it. You have to go back in and make sure that you've updated the passwords and
Yeah.
whatnot. So,
But
but
it helps you. So,
it
I
does.
had
It
put
reminds
in,
you to.
yeah, I had put in my dog's vaccination records, which I actually need because every once, not so much anymore, but every once in a great while, I take him to daycare or I take him to get a bath, and I can't bring him in unless he's up to date on his vaccines. So, once a year, the dog goes into the vet and he gets all his shots. We did that in September. And right around the time when I did that, I actually got a reminder email from Trustworthy saying update Loki's vaccines. And like 3 days later, I got the email from the vet. So, and they don't just, Trustworthy doesn't just remind you once, it reminds you several times. So I got another reminder. And so I went ahead and swapped out the vaccines. And that's just something that I'm not generally on top of. Real important things, maybe yes, but updating that record in Trustworthy for when my dog got his rabies shot is not the top of my mind, but because I got that
Right.
reminder, it's up to date.
Right.
Same with, COVID vaccines and, then there's the other stuff like replacing your license and passports and all of that. But yeah, it kind of keeps you on track. And if you do a little bit at a time, it can seem, I know there's a good onboarding process. I do think it can seem a little bit overwhelming at first because there's a lot of, once you start realizing how many categories of things that you have that are important, it's a lot. But if you just take it piece by piece and follow the onboarding and maybe set aside, a few hours here and there to get it done,
Yeah.
it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
if you're if your stuff is not digitized, oftentimes you can go to your bank or you could go to your insurance company and get a digital copy of your records. And then that saves you from having to scan anything into it. But the
Yeah. And
ability
you
to
can,
send an
yeah.
email into Trustworthy with attachments is great, and then let it figure out where it needs to be sorted and organized is immensely helpful as well.
Yeah. And you can also take, especially you can upload from your phone. So if you have a document, you don't have a digital copy, just take your phone, take a snapshot and upload
Yeah,
it that way,
that
or
works
pull it out of
really
your
well.
photos.
Yes.
So let's talk about this for a minute. Is like I said a couple times now, we see this all the time in client photos. So my first recommendation for people is get them out of your photos and put them somewhere else. They're not helpful in your photos. Yes, some of the AI, depending on where you're keeping it, will help you find, your driver's license. If it's in Apple Photos or another program that has OCR, you can search license, you'll find it, but it's not the best spot. Think about, you're out with friends and you want to show them photos from something, I don't know, in August. So you find that group of photos in your phone, you're handing your phone over, say, hey, look at all this. And right in the middle of your beautiful trip that you're showing them pictures of is a copy of your passport because you took a picture of that before you left, just in case, which is smart, but it's not a good spot for them. So my first recommendation is actually pull that stuff out of your photos, and maybe something like Trustworthy. If you are insistent on keeping it in your photos, there are a few things you can do to make them a little bit safer. So depending on what photo organization software you've used, there's different possibilities, but at the least make them hidden. Most, I know Apple and Mylio and some others allow you to hide photos. That's one thing, create an album of important things and then just hide the whole album. Susan, what are some of your recommendations to, if people insist on keeping them in their photos? What do you,
Yeah,
what do you
creating a
think?
private collection, again, you can do that. You could lock it. If you're using Dropbox, then you can put it in a separate folder that is private to only you, not one that you might be sharing with others. So you have to have the ability to understand where your photos are and what you're doing with them, because if you're sharing your library with someone else, you don't
Yeah.
want that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you forget where it is because it's mixed in with other things.
Right.
If
And
you're using Apple or Google or any of those that are that type, you can create an album with that stuff, but that stuff is still going to show up in the chronology because it doesn't actually move it. It just is a different way to look at it.
right. But even tools like Google Photos has the ability for you to lock a folder. So, but you have to, think about separating, a picture here and there of important docs and putting it somewhere that you can then take action on, whether it's hiding it, locking it, whatever the terminology
Yeah.
is for that photo software. But again, you're interacting when you interact with, for example, Amazon Photos or Google Photos, you're interacting with a company that you're getting for free, so there's no reason for them to keep it safe. So again, you don't want your personal data to get out in the wild. It's something that if you can take the precaution now, do it, and use a tool that is designed to protect your information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. We're in agreement. We don't agree on everything. We absolutely agree on this. And
Yes.
it bothers me when I see that stuff. And it goes well beyond licenses and, passports. That's just the example that we're using. But there's other stuff, that might have your social security number on it and you don't
Oh, yeah.
realize it. And it just does not really belong in your photos. But if you insist on keeping it there or in one of these others, just make sure it's at least behind a password. Notes like Apple Notes, you can put a password on. Even Word documents, you can actually put passwords
A password
on
on.
if you're doing that. So think about where your things are. Consider pulling them out of there and putting them into something else like Trustworthy. But if you are going to keep them there, just take a look at the security around it. We can't talk about every software program on this show and how it would work, but well, we could, but we're not going to today. But just take a
But if
look
you
and
have a
figure out how
question,
to
yeah,
stick it
if you're
behind
doing
a wall.
something, if you're using a tool and you don't know how to do something, and shoot us a question, fill out our form. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions that you might have about the best way to approach things like this.
Yeah. So we went a little bit off center here today's episode, but it was something that we had thought was important to talk about. And so that's why we brought Nat back on, and I'm so glad that we did.
Well, and I learned some new things coming down the pipe, which is helpful, which is why it's
Me
always
too.
good to keep paying for an app, because they can continue to develop it. So
Yeah.
that's
And they
important.
don't want to lose you as a customer. When you're paying for something, it goes both ways, right? You're getting that protection. They don't want to lose you as a customer, as a client. So they are going to put more safeguards in place and do a little bit more innovation, because otherwise if
Become
people,
stagnant. Yeah.
if they become stagnant, people will leave. So it's another reason. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that now. I do use some free apps, but nothing for anything really important.
Yeah.
And this is why.
I agree.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
all of the information about Trustworthy and Nat and all of that will be in our show notes. So you can go visit those. If you have questions, please send them in to the link also in the show notes. And if you enjoy this podcast and now our YouTube, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you give us a nice rating or review. We're still, we've been at this now for a year and a half-ish, having a lot of fun with it. But, we'd like to know if you are too, if you're enjoying it. So give us a review and let us know, and send in your questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Allison.
All
It's another
right.
great podcast in the can, as they say.
In the can. All right. Thank you, Susan. Have a great day.
You too. That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.